All right, here we go. All right, now that our technical difficulties we think have been solved, I want to thank everybody for tuning in for episode number 78 of the fifth chapter. We've got 5 fantastic chapters for all you guys. You missed our great, fun opening to the show, but we've got a lot of stuff to cover, 5 chapters to get to, and we want to take a look at today's book to let you know what's going on in today's show. And as you can see, in the second chapter, nobody noticed that the Dallas Mavericks were not playing the national anthem for the beginning of this year, but now they're going to play the anthem. We'll tell you what we think about that and whether they should have been playing the anthem all along. In the third chapter, the Detroit Tigers are projected to have an improvement in their starting rotation according to ESPN. We'll tell you how much of an improvement they are predicting for the Tigers and whether or not that's good enough. In the fourth chapter, Todd McShay says that the Lions should draft a wide receiver. Is Brad Holmes the next Matt Millen? And Charles Davis says the Lions are not going to draft a quarterback. Uh-oh, SOL. And in the fifth chapter, right after the major wager, the NBA is having an all-star game. At least that's the plan. The NHL is not planning to have one. Who's making the right decision? But Dennis, let's now turn the page to the first chapter, and now that our technical difficulties are out of the way, we get to the NBA, where the Pistons...
I liked it better when I couldn't hear you.
Well, that's the thing, is we could hear each other, but nobody could hear us. It was just silent mode.
They liked it better.
Yeah, I know. They could imagine what we were saying. I guess you were saying go green, go white, and I was saying... I was saying forward down the field. I'm a big Lions fan. That's what they were imagining we were saying.
Yeah, I had a chance to start working my sign language, but I only know a few things.
Yeah.
Although that's my big hobby.
Yeah, I know that sign too. Pistons 6-18 record, second worst record in the league. It appears they're going to fall down to the worst record in the league quickly because Karl Anthony Towns is back for the Minnesota Timberwolves after having a coronavirus break. And when you look at the Pistons, they've never had that great draft luck. When you look at the last, decade plus, the highest they could get in the draft has always been the 7th pick in the draft. They've always hit their head in that ceiling, and this past year they drafted Killian Hayes at number 7, and he's been terrible when he has been on the court, but he hasn't been on the court much. He's only played 7 games because of that hip injury. If the Pistons finally get lucky and win the number 1 pick in the draft, there are 4 or 5 guys who appear to be in contention for the number 1 pick. You got shooting guard Cade Cunningham of Oklahoma State, who some feel could be a point guard. You got Jalen Suggs of Gonzaga. You got Jalen Green of the G League. You got small forward Jonathan Kuminga of the G League. And you've got center Evan Mobley of USC. That's every position covered except for power forward. Dennis, obviously still a lot of time to go before the draft, and the G League hasn't even started yet, or I think it might have started yesterday. If the Pistons get that number 1 pick finally, who do you hope they select?
Well, if they were picking, if they had the lottery tonight and they were making the selection tomorrow, I think they would take Jalen Suggs out of Gonzaga. I think they should take him. He looks like he's the best out of all of them. But it would be between him and Cade Cunningham, who plays for Oklahoma State. I've watched him play a couple times. I've watched both of these guys play. You know, the one thing about Kuminga and Green, you're right. They just started. They play in the same G League. They started yesterday. They are going to be on ESPNU taking on Xavier Simpson's team, I'm told, tomorrow. So I'm going to DVR that game and check those 2 guys out and see what they're all about. And I've only read about the kid from USC, the 7-footer,
Mobley,
the positionless 5, Mobley. Yeah, that's it. So I haven't seen him at all, but I have seen Cunningham and I have seen Suggs, and I would rate Suggs just a hair over Cunningham right now. But Cunningham's a very interesting prospect to watch because he doesn't wow you when you watch Oklahoma State. He doesn't. He's not a volume shooter. He doesn't blow you away with any like shakes or moves, and he doesn't. He's not also jumping out of the gym either. So the comparison of Luka Doncic, and when you watch Doncic, it's not like he does any of those things either. He just always is able to get his shot and able to get to the rim. And Cunningham has that quality to him as well.
Yeah, I've watched Cunningham a couple of times as well, and I kind of had that same opinion that you have, and that is that you recognize that there's talent there, but he just doesn't jump off the screen to you. And I guess maybe it's because he puts together big numbers in big games when I don't watch him. Because I was looking at his stats, 18.7 points per game. Just by using my eye test, I wouldn't predict that he was putting up almost 19 a game. He's got a block a game, 6.3 boards a game, and he shoots 42.3% from downtown, which is extremely important in today's NBA. He's also very good from the free throw line. If he plays shooting guard, that's a big position of need for the Pistons because they've got Wayne Ellington starting right now, and they got Josh Jackson, who's been a nice find, but he's coming off the bench of the worst team in the NBA, and he looks like Jackson could be a nice sixth man down the road for a solid team if the Pistons could become that. But they don't have that star who could be a shooting guard. It's interesting that some folks think that Cunningham could be a point guard. I was looking at some highlights of him earlier today, and he does seem to have a decent ability to find guys cutting into the paint and seems to be a good passer. The top guy on my list is actually not going to be Cunningham or Suggs. I'm going to go with the guy that I haven't seen yet, and that is Jalen Green of the G League. He's 6 feet 6 inches tall, and this is coming a lot from an article that I read on ESPN Plus about him a day or so ago. In the article, some of the highlights were that he was called a cross between Zach LaVine because of his athleticism and Bradley Beal because of his shooting ability. He's also been compared to Kobe Bryant in terms of his ability to play, like a Kobe Bryant light. And honestly, I think that until you show it in the NBA, you're always going to be somebody's light. But if you're going to be somebody's light, it's better to be Kobe Bryant light than Wayne Ellington light. And the article also mentioned that I guess it was a summer or so ago, he practiced or played with Paul George, and Paul George was very impressed with the way he played. I think Brandon Jennings was saying that he could be the number one player in the country. So I definitely want to check out his highlights. I definitely want to see how he fares in the G League, whether it's by recording the game that you were talking about or seeing some highlights on ESPN. But if the experts say that, if the experts are right on what they think he could be, then he's a guy who should be in the mix. And when you consider the athleticism that he has, it's going to outweigh what you got from Cade Cunningham. It's going to outweigh what you got from Jalen Suggs. And the Pistons need another freak athlete on the perimeter. They've got Jeremy Grant, who's a great athlete, but he doesn't handle the ball as much as you would like for a number one scorer. Josh Jackson, like I said, 6 man. Wayne Ellington, stopgap player. Sekou is not. I mean, he's a freak athlete, but hasn't been any good. And Sadiq Bey is not a freak athlete. So this would be an opportunity to get a guy who can jump out the gym. Apparently, he's got some amazing highlight reel dunks. Who does that on the Pistons outside of the one-time Sekou posterized Tristan Thompson Kardashian? I'm intrigued to see what he can do for in the G League. And as of right now, sight unseen, he's my top choice.
Yeah, well, the next Kobe Bryant, has my attention. I'll be checking him out. One thing I remember after Jordan retired, or maybe even while he was still playing, everybody was always like, oh, this guy's the next Jordan. This guy's the next Jordan. You'd watch him. Harold Miner from USC, they're calling him Baby Jordan. It's like, he sucks. Until finally Kobe Bryant came around and said, hey, this guy plays a lot like Jordan. And he was. I mean, he was about as close as a facsimile you could have to MJ. So, yeah, that'll be interesting. Cade Cunningham, the one measurable, and I saw somebody compare him to a mixture of Grant Hill and Luka Doncic, is that he has a wingspan of 7 feet. So if you're talking about him potentially being a point guard, having that kind of length, that'd be pretty interesting. Suggs, watching him, I've watched Gonzaga 3-4 times, and I know Brandon Roy, who he played at Washington and played for Portland, and his career was cut short with a knee injury. But he's built and he looks, and in his game a little bit, it was reminding me of that was my own comparison that I threw out for Suggs, but. Yeah. I'll pick Suggs just barely over Cunningham right now. I did want to say one thing about the Pistons. After their victory over the Nets, they were getting all this love across the country, and even we were talking about them on Tuesday, and we weren't giving them much love. We're like, they're not very exciting, but I was looking at the thread after they beat the Nets, and all these Piston fans like, oh man, this team's so much fun to watch, and oh, I like this guy and I like that guy, and I was like, wow, man, I didn't see the Nets game, so maybe I was missing something. But even the beat writers, here's the headline from Rod Beard. I know not all the beat writers write their own headlines, but observations: electrifying Pistons performance belies 6-18 record. Electrifying.
Okay.
How about from the Athletic and James L. Edwards, the second? Have the Pistons mastered the art of the rebuild? I mean, it's like, wow.
Okay, no, absolutely
I don't know,
not.
man.
Well, you know what else was interesting about the last game that they had against the Nets where they won is there's a stat that went viral showing that the Pistons have the fewest wins in the NBA, but they beat the Suns, the Heat, the Lakers, the Nets, the Celtics, and one other team, the Sixers. But the problem is you have to look at the rest of the story. When they played the Suns and they beat them, that was fair and square. They had all their players. When they played the Sixers, Joel Embiid didn't play. When they played the Nets the other day, Kevin Durant didn't play. When they beat the Lakers, Anthony Davis did not play. When they beat the Boston Celtics, it was Kemba Walker who didn't play, and I forget the other team, but one of their stars didn't play. The Miami Heat, it was 2 stars, Tyler Hero and Jimmy Butler didn't play. So as long as the Pistons are playing a depleted team, then they've got a shot. And I think that when you consider that all those teams have at least championship, if not playoff expectations, they're probably going into that game thinking, you know what, we're playing the sorry Pistons. We don't need to go to 100%. And the Pistons are probably looking at the game saying, oh, we got a shot. We're playing against a team that doesn't have their best player. We need to bring our A game. And you mix those two things together, you get the Pistons blowing out the Brooklyn Nets. But I'm not looking at the Pistons and saying they've mastered the rebuild when they have the second worst record in the NBA, when their first round pick sucked before he got hurt, and now he is hurt. Their other 2 first round picks are not anywhere close to being Rookie of the Year contenders. And the most exciting part about this team is Jeremy Grant. They just traded away a guy in Derrick Rose who perhaps could have brought them back a point guard for the future, maybe a backup point guard for the future in Dennis Smith Jr. But no, I'm not sitting here talking about all these disappointments on this awful team as a sign that the rebuild is going correctly. If they want to get this rebuild correctly, the guys I mentioned and Sekou need to step up. And whether it's this guy up here, Cade Cunningham, or somebody else that they draft, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 in June, need to step up. They are a lot of pieces away.
Well, I'm gonna fall in the middle between the slappy beat writers and Twitter, Piston Twitter, which was a flutter with them beating the Nets, and then you're being completely thinking this is rock. That's nice, and they are getting half of it, which is losing and being the worst team. I mean, that's part of it. In a tank, you want to be the worst team, so they are producing that, and so looking were some bright spots along the way. And you know what? How long is this going to last? Just check with me in 2 weeks. Let's just remember that we were sitting around heading into Valentine's weekend talking about the Pistons mastering the tank and observation.
Other people were talking about it. I wasn't talking about them mastering the tank.
No, I know you weren't. And Rod Beard calling them electrifying. Let's just wait. We'll wait 2 weeks and we'll see. Maybe that was just like a one game or one night. People were all fired up from one night. We'll see about that.
They beat Harden and they beat Kyrie Irving. That's impressive. But if you watch the Brooklyn Nets, and I've been following the Brooklyn Nets, when they don't have all 3 of their stars, they've been very problematic, and they have the absolute worst defense in the league. Actually, I think one of the worst defenses in league history since these 3 came together. So it's a very tricky team.
Yeah, the game that they beat the Lakers, I watched the first half. LeBron looked like looked like the greatest player of all time. He was 8 of 9 from the field. He was throwing down dunks. I just looked awesome. He ended up being I think 1 of 10 in the second half, and faded, and the Pistons ended up beating him. But I only watched half the game. I was thinking, this thing's over.
They lost to the Washington Wizards. Think about that. The Brooklyn Nets, they've in the last week, they've lost to the Wizards and the Pistons. They're a very strange team right now. And then, of course, they come out on the second day of a back-to-back yesterday and blow out a decent Pacers team.
All right, let's look at some of the feedback here on the Pistons and also the potential of who they should take with that number one pick. Let's go through this. Keith, first up, he says, I think Dennis Smith Jr. is going to ball out, so don't draft a point guard. I haven't seen any of these top guys play.
Well, if Dennis Smith Jr. does ball out, then you can take point guard off the top of the list because you'll have Dennis Smith Jr. and then you'll also have Killian Hayes. Now, I will say Killian Hayes on his own is not a reason to not draft Cunningham if you think he can be a point guard or Jalen Suggs. But if Dennis Smith Jr., particularly in this next month before Killian Hayes returns, balls out and looks like he did as a rookie with Dallas, then yeah, you can start looking at some other positions. But right now, they don't have anything outside of the small forward for the next couple years locked up.
Yeah, we're a long ways away until we start saying, hey, let's stay away from a point guard because Dennis Smith Jr. and Killian Hayes got this thing locked up for the future.
Yeah,
long ways away.
Dennis Smith Jr. was on his way to the G League and was playing. I think he played less than 30 minutes this year for the bleeping Knicks. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's the answer. If he balls out, that's great. But I'm not going to sit here and assume that a guy destined for the G League because he couldn't cut it with the Knicks is a guy that's going to be the answer for the point guard with the Pistons.
Yeah, and you're not balling out in the NBA, not balling out in the G League. Right?
Yes, that's what we need.
Keith does say it's too early to start discussing that right now. Jelinek loves Cade Cunningham, averaging 33 minutes a game with 19 points. Need a difference maker immediately. Keith says Pistons played the best game of the year against the Lakers last Saturday night in double OT. They could have won. Josh balled out. The Lakers could not stop him in the fourth quarter. Keith, not at all. You obviously didn't watch the game. It was L.A. and the Lakers got a nice lead, and the Pistons made a great comeback. Yeah, he's talking about last Saturday. There was a lot of – I actually had that game on that the Pistons were getting destroyed, and I turned it over, and Steph Curry was going up against Doncic. They're going back and forth. Curry had over – but he ended up with 57 points or something. Mm-hmm. I went away from the Pistons in that game, and I did see at the end when I turned back, I was like, they made it close.
Yeah, well, that's one thing about the Pistons is that they have had this tendency to get down by like 15 points at the half and then lose the game by 8. Like I was looking at the standings earlier today, and their plus minus for the season is only like -4 or something like that. There are several teams that are down like -7 in terms of point differential per game, but they're only at like -4, which is bad, but it's not close to the worst in the league.
Get to the next chapter.
All right, let's turn that page to the second chapter.
Yeah, and that gets us to the Dallas Mavericks as we stay in the NBA. And the Mavs haven't played the national anthem in all 13 games this year, including those preseason games. Chapman, how necessary is playing the national anthem before basketball games?
Well, obviously they didn't think it was necessary, but let's hear directly from the mouth of Mark Cuban why he decided not to do so when he was actually a guest on The Jump on ESPN earlier this week. So here is what he said during that interview.
Cuban said he made the decision not to play the national anthem after consulting with NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, but now today, NBA Chief Communications Officer Mike Bass issued this statement saying, quote, with NBA teams now in the process of welcoming fans back to their arenas, all teams will play the national anthem in keeping with long-standing league policy. So an interesting situation has developed here, and I'm thrilled to now welcome in Mavericks team owner Mark Cuban. We'll have team CEO Cint Marshall joining us in a minute as well. But Mark, take me through a little bit how you guys came to this decision and then what the conversations were in the past 24 hours that led to this morning, the release issued by the league overturning that.
Well, let me take you through, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. First, we're always talking to our community. I mean, that's something Cint stands for and is very insistent upon and has become a core part of who we are at the Dallas Mavericks. And in listening to the community, there were quite a few people that voiced their concerns, or really their fears, that the national anthem and did not fully represent them, that their voices were not being heard. And so we've had a lot of conversations about whether or not we should play the anthem. And so during the first preseason game, we decided to not play it and just see what the response was, knowing that we were going to have ongoing conversations about it. We didn't make any decision to never play the national anthem. That wasn't the case at all. We didn't cancel the national anthem. We still had our flag flying proud and up on the wall at the American Airlines Center, and everybody had the opportunity to address it and pray to it or salute to it, or whatever their feelings are. And we, as the games went by, honestly, we kept on talking about what we were going to do at some point. But obviously it came to the head when it was reported that at one of our games that we hadn't played it. But, the bottom line is we had always discussed the fact that we probably would end up playing it at some point, probably when fans came back, but there was never any final decision that had made that we would not play the anthem.
And then
So there's the explanation right from Mark Cuban himself. And, the two things that really stand out to me about Mark Cuban's decision and going on for 13 games is, first, that this went on for nearly 2 months. And the first and only Mavs preseason game was on December 17th. So you look at that game plus 11 regular season games. They had a game last night where I guess they played the national anthem, so I think it's 12 games. But whether it's 12 or 13 games total, there was not a word said about the anthem until Tuesday, the day after they hosted the Timberwolves. And you would think that if this was a really, really big deal, that somebody would have said something about it after the first preseason game, after the first regular season game, at some point. And the fact that nobody said anything until Tuesday after our show, because the news broke like right after our show ended, was that it validated what I thought all along, and that is that people won't miss it if they don't have it. And I get that some people love the national anthem being played before games, but if they don't have it and they don't know that it's not there, they're not going to miss it. Only when people found out that they didn't have the national anthem did it become the biggest story in all of sports. But you think about, I guess, I know that there weren't fans at these games, but there were still coaches and players and trainers and security, staff, media members, janitors, scouts. And for those 12, 13 games, none of them said anything to the media or went on social media or anything like that and said, hey, how come they're not playing games at the Dallas Mavericks games? Because it would have been a big story, just like it was a couple of days ago. So that stood out to me, the fact that this went on for so long and nobody said anything. And the second thing that stood out to me was just how quickly things changed once the news went public, because Tuesday night, it was the biggest story in all of sports. And then by Wednesday, Adam Silver said, hey, everybody's playing the anthem. And that was it.
Yeah, well, what's surprising out of all of that is the media. Like the media's job is like to tell what's going on at the game and before the game. And watching the media cover the anthem when the NFL was going on, it was, I don't know, it was like a major story for like a month, and people, they kind of got too much of it, and then it kind of died out. But then there would still be little flare-ups. You would see guys on Twitter that were covering the game like, so-and-so took a knee, or, 3 players didn't, or whatever else. And not to have any of the guys in the media, that's called dropping the ball, by them. So that part was surprising. Mm-hmm. Look, you know what? In the entirety of a game, I like things like, cheerleaders and the introductions to the games, like the Pistons, shooting the flames and all those things. And yeah, I like the national anthem. I think that having some kind of musical piece before the game, where you're going to have the team standing out there before the introductions, whether it would be America the Beautiful or it would be the national anthem. I always like the national anthem, but I'm also ready to evolve and take a look at it. And, it only takes about 5 minutes of reading about Francis Scott Key, who penned the national anthem, And you go through and look, and you quickly realize that guy was not just a racist, but he wanted to keep slaves. He was against. He wanted to hang people that wanted to stand up, for slaves and get rid of them. And so taking a look at him, it's not so much as a cancel culture. Do I understand? Like, if you always say, like, try to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, and I can't walk in their shoes. But I mean, if I was black, I would look at that and be like, that doesn't really feel like it's my anthem. Can we do a remix or something? Get an adjustment.
Get Lil Jon on there.
Something. Make an adjustment. Can we put whether it's a different stanza in there, or mix it up a little bit, or have a different song? Like I said, America the Beautiful.
Yeah, they've talked about using different songs.
Yeah, Lee Greenwood sings a song. He's proud to be an American. That would be fine too. It doesn't have to be the national anthem for me. Now, I know there's people like, I love the national anthem, and what it means to me is honoring America and respecting the military. It's like, okay, we understand that. We understand that's perfectly what you think. But do you understand that there's others that don't think that? And so that's where we have to, if you're just standing your ground, I don't care what you think. I don't care. Like, all right, can we meet here in the middle and figure something out on this? I thought it was interesting. Adam Silver, they're like, okay, we're all good with this, but and Cuban talked to him. What would have happened if Cuban said, no, we're going to take a stand. I'm going to go and one up Colin Kaepernick, who protested the anthem. Cubans could say, we're not only protesting it, we're eliminating it. That would have been interesting to see, because Cuban or Silver would have just said, hey, we're just taking your franchise from you. Big money won out on this one, is what it looked like to me.
Well, it was interesting to actually hear Mark Cuban's explanation, because on Tuesday night when we heard this story breaking, it seemed like Cuban was just done with the national anthem, and if he had already spoken to Adam Silver about it, then Adam Silver was just leaving it up to each individual owner about whether or not they wanted to play the anthem. And part of that conversation that was taking place on Tuesday night was about whether or not this was going to be a trend, whether we would see a second NBA team deciding not to play the anthem, whether we would see it in National Hockey League games, whether it would happen in baseball games where you would have, 5, 10, 20 teams deciding just not to play the national anthem. And what Adam Silver decided to do is say, well, no, we're not going to have this trend. I think he just did not want to have a PR story or something like that. And you can see how the buzz from the story has disappeared very quickly, because it became a story right after our show ended, and now hardly anybody is talking about it. But I'll tell you this. When it comes to what the national anthem means to different people, I think you brought up a good point about how certain communities feel about it, particularly black people. From a personal standpoint, like I'm just not an overly patriotic person, and so sitting around listening to the national anthem, which is not like when I listen to music in my car or something like that, I don't listen to the national anthem. It's kind of a boring song, but that's another issue. Because I'm not an overly patriotic person, the national anthem doesn't mean a whole lot. Like I for years, and this is well before Colin Kaepernick, I have not sung the national anthem. And then beginning in 2017, once I heard President Trump calling people who don't stand for the national anthem sons of bitches, I decided that I was not going to stand for the anthem. And I don't have any plans of standing for the anthem anytime in the near future, regardless of who the president is. It's just not that important to me. And I get that some people have a feeling about the military and love for country and all that when they hear the anthem. But one of the things that I always consider is, what does that have to do with the game? What does that have to do with the game? Because standing for the national anthem and singing or listening to some great singer sing the anthem is about your love for the country or your patriotism or something like that. What does that have to do with going to watch the Dallas Mavericks play the Atlanta Hawks, or going to watch Michigan versus Michigan State at Spartan Stadium or something like that? And for me, the answer is nothing. There's nothing. Just
a tradition of honoring America. That's what it is.
Well, and I get that, but why is there a tradition for honoring America before sporting events when there isn't that tradition for other types of entertainment, when there isn't that tradition for other jobs? Because obviously the people that are working these games are employed. Like when I get ready to do a radio show, I don't sing the national anthem. Before Kroger opens, the cashiers aren't singing the national anthem. Before accountants get to crunching numbers, they don't sing the national anthem. But when these folks get ready to start work, they have the anthem. We don't have it before you go see a movie. So it just seems kind of out of place, and it doesn't seem like it's necessary to have. I get people wanting it, but it's certainly not necessary to have the anthem played.
Well, it's not necessary. And comparing, being at a grocery store and a radio, like large gathering, I mean, that's the idea. And, doing something for, decades, hundreds of years, that kind of seeps into Americana, the whole thing. But let's get to some of the feedback. Some people giving their thoughts. And if you're on Facebook, you can, or Twitch, or on the live chat. Let's go to it here. Let's just read through some of these. Keith's sick of the national anthem discussion. He doesn't think it should be played. It serves no purpose but controversy. Jelinek says, love agreeing with you. It's not necessary at all. Would the majority of the people really care? Kenneth says,
well, and on that topic, considering they went a dozen games and nobody said a word about it, obviously it wasn't necessary. It wasn't missed. There was no uproar until people found out that it wasn't there. But if you don't have it there, people aren't going to start games and say, hey, something's missing. I was supposed to have the national anthem. Where was it? Nobody noticed.
I don't know, for decades, people used to complain about the Lions not having cheerleaders, so that's another thing. Like, you just look down, people, like, if you change something or other teams are doing something, people are going to talk about it. Let's see. Kenneth says the anthem should be shelved. Peter S., and this is our winner of the Barry Sanders 2000 Game Day program from our big game. Big game. We went through it. And Peter, congratulations on winning the Fifth Chapter's Super Bowl contest. Nice job. Peter says, what is the point of playing the anthem besides tradition? And we went over that a little bit. No point, just play the damn game, Keith says.
Yeah, like when you think about going to particular sporting events or watching particular sporting events on TV, afterwards, you talk about, oh, remember that great catch that the center fielder had? Remember that big shot that the point guard had? Oh, that great slap shot on the power play. And I get that people say, well, what about the Whitney Houston national anthem? But you think about like 3 or 4 great anthems over the years. You think about, Mo Cheeks coming in and helping the little child come and finish the national anthem. But you can think of 3 or 4 or 5 great national anthem moments. But the sporting events that we attend and watch on TV are about what takes place after the anthem. And let's also not forget that not only are there, very few people like myself who will go to a game and not stand up, but there are also folks that are sitting on the toilet inside the stadium during the anthem. They're not standing up. You got folks that are getting their beer and their $6 pretzel, and they're not pausing concessions during that time. So it's if they don't have the anthem, it's not going to be that big a deal. Things are going to go on because things have been going on during the anthem.
Yeah, well, if they're not going to play the anthem, still having some music before the games where some of these, people are going to stand up.
Yeah, they're going to do that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they're going to do it. So, well, I agree. Like, if they just transition to, let's say, America the Beautiful, I don't think there would be that big of an uproar about that. But, you have the different schools and choirs and things that have gone down there and, I've had a chance to sing. People do like that. And, it gives it also just sets the scene, too, for the game. If they just go through warm-ups, it's like, hey, let's get going. Or, now let's just have the introduction. Well, it's all of the, the pregame kind of pomp and circumstance that goes into that. And, again, that's tradition. Again, I'm not telling you that it's absolutely necessary. I'm just going over the tradition. And I'm reading some of these texts where Peter says, I think Adam Silver telling the teams they should have to play is an abuse of power. I don't know. Abuse of power, they got together in a collective bargaining agreement. They have how their game day is going to go. And since every sport since the beginning of the United States has incorporated the national anthem.
Well, I don't think it's been that long. I think they started playing the national anthem like about 100 years ago, and it had something to do with being in a war or something like that, trying to bring people together during a wartime. But it's not like when baseball first started, the first time they played, they said, hey, what if we sing the national anthem first? I think it started in like the 1920s or 30s. But obviously for all of our lives, it's been taking place.
Fair enough. Do they play the anthem when you start work? And I see how people are saying they're getting tired of talking about it. I'm tired of reading the text here. I've gone to over 1,000 concerts in my life. I've never heard the anthem. Peter is happy to win the Barry Sanders game day program. I'm glad he's happy. Brian says, a side note, I'm so over Karen Newman singing the anthem at Wings games. She's got to go. All right.
I mean, I think Wings fans like seeing her because she's a familiar face. She's been doing it for a long time, and it's part of tradition. But if she retired and they didn't have a national anthem, I think that for a while people would say, hey, what happened to that Karen Newman woman? But people go to the games for the game, and that's what I want to see. I want to read a couple of tweets on the matter. Stan Van Gundy, former head coach of the Pistons and current head coach of the New Orleans Pelicans, put out this tweet the other day. And it says, this should happen everywhere. If you think the anthem needs to be played before sporting events, then play it before every movie, concert, church service, and the start of every workday at every business. What good reason is there to play the anthem before a game? And also, on Tuesday night, I put out a poll on Twitter asking what people thought about Cuban's decision. 47.4% say they really didn't care. 28.1% say that it was a bad decision and they'll root for Mavericks losses, and 24.6% say that it was a good decision and unnecessary at games. So, there's really basically two splits. There's about a 50-50 split between people that care and don't care, and among those that care, it's about a 50-50 split between those who think it was a bad decision by Cuban and a good decision by Cuban.
All right, I'm ready to move on.
All right, then let's turn the page to the third chapter. And in the third chapter, we go to Major League Baseball, and in particular, the Detroit Tigers. They, of course, had an atrocious starting rotation last year. And ESPN Plus put out this article on the way too early 2021 MLB starting rotation rankings, and they did their rankings based on a stat called pitcher scores, and it used the last 50 starts for a pitcher, looked at the strength of schedule for that team, and then made 2021 predictions. Obviously, when you look at the number one starting rotation in baseball, who would you guess it would be?
The Dodgers.
Yes, they were number one. They just got Bauer. They have Walker Buehler, Clayton Kershaw, David Price, Julio Urias, and then Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin might not even have spots in the rotation if people don't get hurt. Number two is the Yankees with Garrett Cole, Jameson Taillon, Corey Kluber, a new addition, Davey Garcia, and Luis Severino. And three is the Nationals. The top rotation in the AL Central belongs to the Indians with Bieber, Plesac, Savale, McKenzie, and Cal Quantrill. As for the Tigers, obviously you have to start from the bottom, considering last year they had a 5.63 team ERA, which is dead last in baseball, and only 9 quality starts. But if you start from the bottom, it might take you longer than you think to find them. The Orioles were dead last, Rangers were 29th, Mariners are 28th. You have to go all the way up to 24th to find the Detroit Tigers. Their projected rotation is Boyd, Turnbull, Fulmer, Mize, and Skubal. They also have Jose Urania and Matt Manning in the mix, but the Tigers are ranked 24th for projected starting rotation. Dennis, do you think that is too high, too low, or about what you would expect? And how would you react if that's where the Tigers' rotation was at the end of the 2021 season?
Well, it's about what I expect, but if it was there at the end of the season, I would be highly disappointed, and I would be ready to fire Al Avila. I'm actually already ready to do that, but if this thing bombs and they're in the 20s, when that's all they have done is draft pitchers, and now they're going to have their big guns actually up, and if not in the rotation, certainly in the bullpen or something. All of the baby in, and we're bringing them along, and we're watching, Fulmer's not just going to be an opener this year. He should be expected to go out there and pitch 5 innings. Mize, you don't have to pat him on the head anymore. Same thing with Skubal. I mean, these guys, it's the big time. I'm expected to see something. No, they don't have to be a top 5. They don't even have to be top 10. But should they show something where the future is going to look promising? Mize, Manning, Skubal, and Fulmer, that's 4 guys. It's time to swim, man. Yeah, they can start out that way, but by the end, if they're in the 20s, this thing is a disaster. And, Al Avila, it's kind of of course he should be out then at that point.
I've always obviously been calling for him to be fired for a long time. But I've actually got mixed feelings about this. I like the strength of your statement about how he needs to be fired if they finish 24th. But the reason I have mixed feelings about this is because last year their starters were horrendous with the exception of Turnbull. And if they jump from 30th to 24th, that would be a huge step forward because they were so bad. And they jumped from being so bad to being respectably bad. On the other hand, though, it's like you were saying, their rebuild has been so much about the starting rotation. I mean, we saw within the last couple of weeks that MLB.com and Baseball America each have the Tigers with 5 prospects in the top, not just 100, but the top like 30 to 50, and those include Manning, Mize, and Skubal. And so if those guys are up and you're still getting drilled, then what does that say about the impact that Manning, Mize, and Skubal are making? They're obviously not turning into the next Verlander, Kershaw, Bauer, etc. And perhaps one of them is looking like the next Clayton Kershaw. But if they're, as a whole, the 24th best rotation, then that suggests that the other 2 stink. And that also, you could include Michael Fulmer. If the Tigers are finishing 24th, then perhaps he's a bit better than he was last year when he couldn't make it out of the 3rd inning. But given that he was the AL Rookie of the Year, given that he is a former All-Star, and he's going to be not just 2 but 3 years removed from that Tommy John surgery, if the Tigers have the 24th rotation in all of baseball, then obviously he's never going to become an All-Star again, or at least he's not going to become an All-Star in the near future. Let's also not forget this. There was addition by subtraction during the offseason because Jordan Zimmerman is finally gone. So with him gone, him being one of the worst pitchers in all of baseball for the last several years, you would think that would boost them up. But yeah, if they're sitting there with the 24th best rotation, it would be a significant improvement. But this is not a time where guys come in terms of Manning, Mize, and Skubal, and it should take them a couple of years to show that they can be good pitchers. If Fulmer could come in as a rookie and almost lead, be like an inning away from winning the ERA title, then at least one of these guys, preferably multiple of these guys, should be able to pop this year.
Yeah, and the thing that Chris Ilitch and Al Avila are selling for the Tigers, it's still the future. Like, I know I was talking about, not only that it would be nice, but I was expecting this team to be 500. But when I look at what they've come up with and how they filled the gaps here, I mean, that would be, like one of the most amazing stories of all time. Like, they're going to be well below 500. Do I think that they should lose 90 games? No. I think this team better be, in the 80s somewhere. I think something like a 74-win team, 74 and 88 sounds about right to me. But I was looking today, Baseball Prospectus. I know you like Fangraphs, and I know they do a good job on. They don't just sit around, making their pick by like, I think I'm going to pick 75 wins. They have some kind of algorithm that they put in there. Baseball Prospectus uses something called the PECOTA standings, and I looked today, and they're below my 74 win total. 67 and 95 is what their prediction for the Tigers, and that's right at the bottom. Only a few teams that were worse than all of Major League Baseball. So, not glowing predictions coming in here for the Tigers. They're supposed to be a doormat of Major League Baseball.
Well, and that makes sense given that they're 2 years removed from having one of the worst seasons in baseball history. They were terrible last year, and when you look specifically at the starting rotation, and we're talking about guys like Mize, Manning, and Skubal. Manning did not make his debut last year, but Mize and Skubal did, and they were awful. I get that some folks like to say, don't just give up on a guy right now. It's too early. And I'm not giving up on a guy. But when you look at the AL Central and you see Brady Singer from the Royals look pretty good. You got Dane Dunning from the White Sox looking pretty good. You got Tristan McKenzie, the stick figure for the Cleveland baseball team, because they're not the Indians anymore, looking very good. And
What are they called?
I think they're just the Cleveland baseball team right now because they got rid of Indians. When you got him coming in there and looking very good. You look at, obviously, on the world champion Dodgers, they've got two guys in May and Gonsolin who are studs. You don't need to, there's no reason to make an excuse for saying, oh, you got to give them time. You can come in and look good right away. You can come in and look decent right away, because Brady Singer didn't look like a superstar, but he looked like he belonged in the major leagues. Mize and Skubal looked terrible. And if that happens again this year, or they make incremental improvements as opposed to gigantic leaps, that's a huge problem, and will not suggest that they're going to get to the Dennis Fithian bar of 74 wins.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. So we'll be talking more Tigers in the weeks and months ahead. Let's get to some more exciting chapters here.
All right, we'll turn the page to the fourth chapter then.
Oh, and that's me, where I talk about the Lions and the NFL draft. Pretty interesting. You had some of the big dogs in mock drafts from the NFL Network of Charles Davis saying something. You had Todd McShay talking about drafting a wide receiver. What do you make of some of these mock drafts, Chapman?
Yeah, in terms of the wide receiver, it wasn't just any wide receiver. It was Devontae Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner from Alabama. That was the choice for Todd McShay, as I think a lot of folks are now starting to understand that the Lions could lose all of their top three receivers from last year. And Charles Davis, he was quoted in a Detroit Free Press article. I guess he was speaking to members of the fake news media before the Super Bowl. But he said pretty much that because the Detroit Lions have Jared Goff in the mix, that he thinks that they could elect to not draft a quarterback at all. Now, if you look at the Todd McShay mock draft, there wouldn't be a quarterback worth taking, because in the McShay mock draft, now let me see if I can find it in my notes. He obviously had Trevor Lawrence going 1. He had
Wilson.
Yeah, Wilson going 2. He had the Panthers trading up for Trey Lance at 3, and he had the Falcons taking Fields at number 4. So even if the Bengals traded down with some team, the fifth best quarterback is all you could get at the number 5 pick. But like I've been saying for months, the Lions taking a wide receiver would not just be some stupid Millen move, given all that could be missing. If Marvin Jones is appearing to want to follow Stafford to L.A., if Amendola probably doesn't want to be part of a rebuild, if Galladay is saying, I want to get my money, and the Lions might not have the money to sign him to the franchise tag, and he might not want to stay long-term and be part of a rebuild, then you can talk all you want about linebacker being in need, defensive end, defensive tackle, secondary being in need. Wide receiver becomes a huge need as well. Now, I don't think that Quintez Cephas is going to be entering the NFL draft as the number 1 wide receiver. They'll find some guy from another team who's the number 3 somewhere else saying, hey, I can get more playing time by going to the Lions. And Cephas, by the time we get to draft day, will be the number 2 or number 3 wide receiver. But they're not going to be trading for Mike Evans. The Lions are still going to need to draft a wide receiver, if not on day 1, in day 2, and perhaps even on day 3 as well. So yes, wide receiver should be an option. That doesn't mean they have to take a wide receiver, because they have holes just about everywhere. But wide receiver, if they take one, as long as it's Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, or Devontae Smith, I'm not going to rip them for that.
No, I think they need to figure out a way to keep Galladay and try to get some value for him and trading for him. And I know this doesn't mean a whole lot, but it is something to take a look at. There's only been 4 wide receivers that have won the Heisman Trophy. And so you just go through their careers. Desmond Howard, great returner, Super Bowl MVP. Tim Brown, he was good.
Yes.
The Hall of Famer, right?
Yes.
Johnny Rodgers back in 72. So there's actually just been 3. That's the look. The one thing about the quarterbacks, and this is the way I felt for months, it could change leading up to the draft, but after Lawrence and Wilson and Fields, taking that fourth guy, which would be Lance. Who knows if he'll be sitting there at 7? That feels today like it would be a reach. I actually had Jelinek look at the last 10 drafts and who the fourth quarterback picked was in the last 10 drafts. Get a load of the fourth quarterback over the last 10 years. You ready for these?
Yeah.
Jordan Love, Drew Lock,
Ugh.
Josh Rosen,
Ugh.
Deshaun Kaiser,
Ugh.
Christian Hackenberg,
Ugh.
Sean Mannion,
Ugh.
Derek Carr,
Ugh.
Matt Barkley, Brandon Whedon, Christian Ponder, Colt McCoy. That's the list. So you start thinking, wow, man. And I know it doesn't mean like Trey Lance for sure, but that you wouldn't take him. But he looks like he's going to be the fourth quarterback taken. Would you really want to take him at 7? I don't know. You got to get that workout. Studying him, watching him. Looks great at North Dakota State. All of those things. So, yeah, I think if the Lions do like Trey Lance, I think they should be moving back.
Yeah, and as far as what Charles Davis was saying with regards to not drafting a quarterback, I think he's right because I don't think they're going to be drafting a quarterback, at least not in the first 2 rounds. If they want to take a guy who slips to them in round 3 as a project, then I'm okay with that. But they have a solid quarterback in Jared Goff who's owed a lot of money, and because of that, because they just went out and acquired him, and they've got a new regime, I think he's owed an opportunity to show if he can turn himself around. And on top of that, this isn't just like some guy coming in and being traded to the Lions that nobody trusts him. You got 2 executives, including the general manager, who were on the team, who were on the Rams when they drafted Jared Goff. So they have to like something about him to want to acquire him. So with that being the case, I don't see them taking a guy at number 7. The only circumstance where I would consider taking a quarterback at 7 would be if Justin Fields and only Justin Fields dropped to them. I'm less interested in trading up for him as I was a couple of weeks ago because they have a guy in Goff who I think it makes sense to take a look at. But I would not take Wilson or Lance at number 7. I wouldn't trade up for one of those 2. If maybe they want to trade up 1 or 2 spots to get Fields, perhaps if the cost is not too high. But if I'm the Lions, I'm good with Goff, taking a look at him for a year or so. If he becomes a top 5 NFC quarterback, then you're set. If he's not, the Lions are going to be so bad they'll be in the running for the number 1 pick in the 2022 draft, and they'll have the assets necessary to move up if they're sitting there at number 3.
Yeah, my only disagreement is that there's not pressure to take a quarterback at 7, so they don't have to take Lance. But I think if Wilson or Fields was there at 7, if either of those guys fell to him,
yeah, I would take Fields. I would take Fields at 7,
and I would take Wilson as well. So that's where we differ a little bit. Let's get to some of this feedback before we place our bets and also talk some All-Star games. Let's see. Won't hate the Lions taking Smith at 7. This is from Brian Jelinek. He says, worried that he's too small, 175 pounds. Mm-hmm. Yikes. Keith says Jamar Chase is the best wide receiver in the draft, and I think he will be a star. Just saying Jalen Waddle is second. Devontae Smith is too small as a prospect. He says 170 pounds. He better gain some weight. I don't know, like Jamar Chase and Devontae Smith, they seem to be like, maybe Chase weighs a little bit more, but they're around the same height. They're like the same kind of body styles to me when I take a look at it. Keith says, I still hate the Lions, but glad Stafford's gone. And the Dumbo duo of Patricia and Quinn. Yeah, that's right. They have a chance to do something else there.
They are gone. That's a positive for everybody.
All right, well, let's turn the page here.
All right, let's get to the major wager. It's an opportunity for us to give you some sports betting advice. And, Dennis, if I recall, on Tuesday, you picked the Michigan State Spartans to cover 3 points, and they won against my Nittany Lions by 2.
And if I recall, you took Penn State and the money line in that game.
Well, I said that it was a good pick. That wasn't my official major wager pick, but yes,
right.
I did say that I would take Penn State in the money line. So from that standpoint, we both lost. We picked different teams and we both lost. And it sucks because when you look at a line like 3 points, you figure, hey, if Michigan State's going to win, can they win by at least 4 points? Yeah. Can they win by at least 3 to push? Yes. And they have to win by 2. And then in terms of Penn State, you're like, well, yeah, they could win that game, and then they choked down the stretch. So it was a tough night if you took our advice on that. But my major wager was
I'm not taking Michigan State anymore. The combination of Lawyer and any other Watts, the true freshmen that they're putting out there. I mean, these guys they don't have a point guard. I'm not taking Michigan State anymore.
I can understand that. My pick was the Portland Trail Blazers, and they crushed the Orlando Magic.
Yeah, well, that gets us to tonight. You got any hot selections, or you want me to go first?
You can go first. I've got a selection, but you can go first.
Well, I did have to call this one in before the show because the game is ongoing. I went to tonight's game with the Pistons. A lot of shine on the Pistons for beating all these big dogs and everything else. And the Pacers are coming on the back end of a back-to-back. But you know what? Mine is just giving up the 3 points. I like the Pacers in this one, and that was my pick. Let's go to the scoreboard, shall we?
Yeah.
We are in the second quarter, and it's the Pacers by a half dozen right now.
Yep, 28-22, so that's looking like a pretty good pick so far. My pick, you still have an opportunity to bet this game because it doesn't start until 9 p.m., about 22 minutes from now, and that is Morehead State. They are a 7.5-point favorite over Tennessee State. Morehead State, I don't know what conference they're in, but I did look at the standings. Morehead State is second place in their conference, and Tennessee State is, I believe, 2-15 this year. They haven't. I think they've hardly. I mean, obviously they've hardly won any games. And they played earlier this year, if I'm not mistaken, and Morehead State won. But I feel very strongly about Morehead State going on the road to beat Tennessee State. Take that to the bank.
All right, we'll put you down for that one.
All right, Dennis, now let's turn the page to the 5th chapter, and that takes us to some all-star games, or is it a couple of all-star games? Because in the NHL, they decided that they were not going to have an all-star game back on October 22nd. That's when they announced that they would be canceling the Winter Classic, and they'd be canceling the NHL All-Star Game due to the coronavirus pandemic. As far as the NBA All-Star Game, that's a different story because the league is reportedly closing in on a deal that would have Atlanta host the All-Star Game on the 7th of March. I believe that's when it is, and they were going to have their All-Star break from the 5th to the 10th. The details could include having everything on one day and having the slam dunk contest take place during halftime of the All-Star Game. Not everybody's on board with the idea. That includes LeBron James. Here is what he said last week when he was interviewed about the potential of having an All-Star Game this year.
I have zero energy and zero excitement about an All-Star Game this year. I don't even understand why we're having an All-Star Game. But it's the agreement that the Players Association and the league came about. Short off season for myself and my teammates was 71 days. And then coming to this season, we were told that we were not having an All-Star Game, so we had a nice little break. 5 days from the 5th to the 10th, an opportunity for me to kind of recalibrate for the second half of the season, my teammates as well, some of the guys in the league, and then they throw an All-Star Game on us like this and just breaks that all the way up. So pretty much a kind of a slap in the face. We're also still dealing with a pandemic. We're still dealing with everything that's been going on. And we're going to bring the whole league into one city that's open. Obviously the pandemic has absolutely nothing to do with it at this point when it comes to that weekend. Obviously you guys can see I'm not very happy about it, but it's out of my hands. And, I'll be there if I'm selected, but I'll be there physically, but not mentally.
So there you go. Words from King James. Zero excitement if he has to go. Dennis, what do you think about the NHL not having an All-Star Game and the NBA having one where perhaps the biggest star in the league is not going to be happy to go?
Yeah, I'm with LeBron. I'm with the De'Aaron Fox who called it stupid. But you know what? I think if the All-Star game is in your city, like if the All-Star game is going to be at Little Caesars Arena next year, that'd be pretty cool to go to. But other than that, man, the NBA All-Star game jumped the shark a long time ago. I used to like it when I was younger, but it sucks. I remember about 5 years ago, I was still kind of hanging in there, thinking, it's still. And there it was on a Sunday night, and I was out with some friends at the bar. We were actually sitting up at the bar, and I asked the bartender to tune into the All-Star game. It was on. She was like looking at me, and everybody else was kind of looking at me stupid too. But I watched it, and then the people around me are like, oh, so is this, I remember the All-Star game, so they're watching. And the product sucked so bad. Everybody was looking at it and said, wow, man, do you have to watch that? Are people going to talk about it on the radio? And I was like, no, they're not going to talk about it on the radio. I don't know why I watched it. I said, go ahead, turn it off. I think last year when they did those like Hollinger rules or something, I wasn't even watching it anymore, but the people were like, hey, it's pretty cool. It's jumped the shark. The NHL All-Star Game always sucked. The Pro Bowl blows. And I used to like the Major League Baseball All-Star Game. Before you had interleague play, you didn't get that much of a chance. Even if you had cable, you didn't see, the stars from the National League as much. It was pretty cool. It really was a midsummer's classic. I can remember I would take a week or two off annually before I got married. I'd go up north and watch. We have a TV, but just it had back in the day like rabbit ears or whatever else. But for the All-Star Game, I would drive the 5 miles up to this bar for the All-Star Game. I'd watch the whole thing. I was like the only one there watching it. But it was pretty cool. But the last couple of years, I was on vacation with my family. And the one time they're like, here we are. We were out in Florida and everything. Even though it was the summer there. Do you really want to go watch the All-Star Game? Like we had something going on. I'm like, no. And then we were in Colorado. And I made the plan, let's go. And this was this huge bar that had this famous fried chicken and everything. And we were in there. And again, we weren't really seated by the bar. And I asked them to turn it on. And the whole place, like nobody, like there's 50 people in there. Not one person is looking up at the freaking All-Star Game or anything else. So I know. So I've missed a couple All-Star Games. And it's like I'm over the All-Star Games. I think they all suck.
Yeah, for the most part they do. NHL All-Star Game, they don't play any defense, and the final score is like 10-8. Now they got the tournament, which I guess makes it a little better. Basketball games, like the NBA All-Star Games were never about defense, but now it's not like 150 to 140. It's like 189 to 186. I mean, just to the extreme, no defense. NFL Pro Bowl, I hardly ever watched that. Baseball, I used to love watching the baseball All-Star Game as a kid, and I thought that it was a great decision to have the All-Star Game decide home field advantage in the World Series, because for the most part it didn't matter, because it only mattered if there was a Game 7, which hardly ever happens in the World Series, but it got these guys to all play hard, and whether you thought it was a dumb idea or not, it was an entertaining game for the most part. But in terms of this year, yeah, I'm with LeBron. I'm with the NHL 100%. We got a global pandemic. Over 1 million people have died. Over almost 500,000 people are going to be dead by the time the NBA All-Star Game has the All-Star Weekend, if not over 500,000 people. The most important thing is to label the players as All-Stars. You can send them a plaque, give them a jersey, then give them 5 days off. They didn't have a Pro Bowl this year, and the NFL players didn't seem to miss it, but the players that were named to the Pro Bowl can say for the rest of their life, hi, I'm such and such, and I am a Pro Bowl football player. Frank Ragnow can say I'm a Pro Bowl center, even though he didn't go to Hawaii and play in the game. NHL did the right decision. Now, it's also more difficult for them because they're playing in 2 different countries, so they would basically have to take a month off to do 14-day quarantines just to play a game, and then 14-day quarantines to be able to play back in Canada for the 7 teams that are playing up north. But, I mean, I think there are going to be a lot of players like LeBron James who are going to be saying, why am I sitting here in Atlanta and not in a packed stadium with all the celebrities? That's one of the cool things about the NBA All-Star Game is all the celebrities sitting courtside and looking, fabulous in all their expensive clothes. Now it's going to be in an empty arena where you're going to have a 184 to 179 basketball game with no defense. It's going to suck. It's going to be stupid.
Yeah, scrap it. Jelinik's like you. He said the All-Star game was awesome, and baseball wanted to determine home field advantage. It was an actual game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was better, and it was better than what they used to do before, which was random every other year. They just switched it. This one, actually put something behind it, which was good. So I was behind that decision as well. So there you go.
Yep.
All right. Well, it wasn't the greatest start of the show, but it ended up being a really good one. Oh wait, that was me trying to. At the beginning
you
of the
scared
show.
me for a second. I was saying, no, not again, not again.
It's been good timing. That's going to do it. Thanks to Brian Jelinik for supplying the information to me and running that chat. Good job. And for Brian Chapman, who engineered this broadcast, sent all this information his way.
Not my best day.
Complaints his way. We will talk with you on Tuesday. Have a great weekend. Thanks for watching the Fifth Chapter.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fifth Chapter. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fifth Chapter.